over. Can you say that size was something that you were trying to chase after, or trying to add?
We were conscious of it, but to be honest with you, those picks, when they came back to back to back, it was not all. We weren't just going for size. There were players we targeted, and that was more coincidence that all of them happened to be that size. But certainly something that we're certainly not against when we were drafting.
You moved back those 2 spots in the second round.
Yeah.
Was that did another team take a player you would target?
No, actually, we had a couple of players there we were going to be happy with, so we got to move up significantly from the third into the second, which allowed us to get another player that we were happy with. So for 2 spots, we felt it was worth it at the time.
Brent,
yeah,
all good. Okay. The size thing, obviously we can look at the heights and weights and see that, but it seemed to me, based on, what I know about a lot of these prospects, it seems like pretty much everybody had high compete tool. Is that something that, was that not something you were targeting, but just something you guys value really highly in prospects? So obviously you're going to get guys like that.
For sure. You watch the playoffs. It's a grind. Like it's, to be able to get to the NHL, you have to have a tremendous work ethic, and then to be able to have success in it, you got to have that side of it. So the guys we drafted, and it's part of what Talk wants, it's part of what Jonesy and Danny want. We want competitive people, and I think we did a pretty good job of that today.
Do you think that, and I know that it's not like it's not like there was ever a time where teams didn't want big players with high compete, but do you think the success of Florida had an impact on the draft today, not just for you guys, but for teams overall?
It's more of a stylistic thing that they've done. But no, I think size has always been a factor in the playoffs for years. But they've the way they play, they've kind of perfected it. And but you need to be able to combat that. But there's different types of teams who play in the NHL that, whether it's speed or whatnot. But the playoff hockey, though, it's a grind, and size certainly helps.
How much did Amico's injury play into him not being a first-round pick? Because that's the guy with
pretty much all of it. Yeah. No, he's. I was lucky enough to see him a number of times early before the injury, and I was at the game where he actually re-injured it. And but the medical reports we got, and our staff was able to examine it further, and basically the previous, you guys can talk to him in development camp, but the previous surgery just didn't take, so just had it redone, and it was successful, and our doctors are confident it's going to be good to go.
Both Vansagi and Gard are known as really high motor players, high compete guys.
Yeah.
Was that specifically why you like those guys?
Well, Vansagi's a different. I don't know if you've had a chance to watch him, but you watch him in Michigan State this year. He gets that whole arena going. Like, he's a big kid. He plays a certain way, and there were not many of the players like him in this draft, or many drafts. So I think he's got some work to do to get to the NHL, but once he does, I think he'll be a fan favorite in this, and he'll be a very welcome teammate.
Brent, Max Westergaard, the 5th rounder.
Yep.
I know in NHL Central Scouting, he had a huge jump from his midterm mark. Did he have a really strong second half that kind of caught your eye?
Yeah. Obviously, our European guys followed him closely, and he had a very good tournament in Texas too, the U18. So he's a talented kid. Obviously, on the other side of our size, he's not the biggest. He's going to have to put on some weight, get stronger, but he's quick. He's got skill. He can create offense on him by himself. So at that point, we thought it was a value pick.
Obviously, centers were a pretty big priority in the first half of the first draft, the round there.
Mm-hmm.
Danny mentioned yesterday that Porter was just one of those guys that even though he was a winger, when he falls to you guys like that, you just have to take him. What was it really about him that made you guys just like one of those positions where it's like, it's a position that you guys are pretty log jammed at, but he's that good of a player that you guys need to take him?
Yeah, it's just, he's a guy that's, his name's been around for a while. I've seen a lot of him as an underage, and just the whole complete package there, as far as his size, his skill, hockey sense. He's got juice. He's always engaged around the net. He's always stirring it up and driving people crazy. So he's got that edge, but more importantly, his skill set is high end when it comes to offense, and his ability on the power play to break things down and create things and see things that a lot of guys can't. It's just one of those things that he's just too talented to pass up at that point.
I know last year when you guys drafted Jet, and correct me if I'm wrong, but part of the reason he was attracted to you guys was because he had a strong second half of the year, right? And he did some good things late. He was maybe a late riser on a lot of draft boards.
Yeah.
Is Jack Nesbitt sort of in the same boat where you saw some things with him later in the year and you were under the impression that other teams might have him moving higher on their list?
No, I
That's
think,
what-
well, Jack actually had a pretty steady year. I think he got more opportunity, more ice time as the season went on. But he was a guy that really, was pretty good throughout. I think initially he was more used in defensive situations, which for a young player, his details are very good. But then they got him on the power play. He was very good in his net front role, retrieving pucks, tips. But he's a smart player. He's obviously his size. He's going to have to grow into his body. But when you watch him play, the only thing that I'm missing is strength. That's something that he can work on, and it just takes some time. But no, he was good in the second half, and at the end, their team was so banged up. He played every second shift for the last series and a half, and he was pretty much gassed by the end of it. But no, he's a guy we're really excited about, the whole staff in general.
Brent, I actually have two quick questions. The first one is just maybe how would you rate? I know it just ended for you guys, but how would you rate the drafts?
Good. Obviously, we're elated with the first round, and then the second round, the way it turned out, we were very happy. So we got a number of players, and Murtaugh was a guy we had highly touted, or we all liked across the board as a staff. He can play a lot of different ways. He can score. He can really skate. He's competitive. He can bang, crash, go to the net, and do all these things. So, but terrific kid. And but yeah, through the second round, we were happy with guard and obviously Van Saggy and as the draft obviously was a little dull there for a couple of rounds and slow going, but we added a couple guys that guys have time for, and we're excited about at that point in the draft. So, but the draft quickly, the draft, as we stated before, there was a fall off point, and but we got a few guys we threw darts and have some assets that hopefully can give them a chance to play down the road.
When we talked with Porter yesterday, and I believe he mentioned a little bit in Buffalo too, that he thinks he's a little closer to NHL ready than maybe other prospects. I mean, how do you rate his game? And are you looking at a lot of these guys as more as like long-term projects versus someone who's going to jump in pretty quick?
Well, certainly Porter's closer than most, I think, just because of his experience. He's his late birthday, so he's a bit older, but he's also very experienced, and his game's probably a little more mature. He's got some things to work on just as far as strength and conditioning and that, which he'll do like any young player. But even playing with the men at the end, he saw when he elevated his game. Junior sometimes can be a little easy for players like him, and but when he was playing with Ben, where he had to go and move his feet and play with pace, and he excelled. So so that answer your question?
Yeah, Brent, I have a couple of questions, but the first one is jumping off of Jackie's question. I'm thinking specifically of Carter Amico and Shane Van Saggy. They're two guys who physically are big and strong already. Does that make them closer to the NHL, or do you think they have work to do on other sides of their game that maybe make it take longer for them to get there, as opposed to how they maybe physically match up?
Yeah, well, I think as far as Amico, I think he's just a naturally huge human being. So I think he's still got some things to work on, and he's going to college, and he'll take time to round out his game. And he needs reps. Obviously, missing time this year's never good for any young player. So, but he's going to play lots here the next couple of years. Van Saggy's probably a different story. I think the way I don't think he knows he's ever going to play a different way. I think he's going to have more of an offensive role this year. He was a really young guy for college hockey this year. So, but he has an impact. He finds a way to impact games every game. And like I said, he's probably the way he plays now is probably going to be similar to the way he plays in the NHL. And he works. He's an animal in the gym, and so you can't take that away. Can't punish him for that. That's for sure.
And then one guy who you hadn't gone into detail about yet too much, Matthew Guard. What specifically did you guys like about him?
Well, he's another player that I think in Red Deer it wasn't the strongest team, so he was forced to defend a lot. But he's another big, kind of like Nesbitt as far as his body type. He's going to have to fill out and get stronger over the years, but he projects out to be a good skater, very responsible defensively, and we think he has more offense than he was able to show in certain situations this year. So he's a competitive kid. He's got an edge, and He's in a good environment where he's going to play a lot, and we'll see. So it should be a good year for him.
Brent, with the addition of Porter, yeah, I know Porter and Matvei Mishkov can probably play both wings, but both right wingers. Do you feel like you look at the right side and think you guys could really be a promising team on that side for the future?
Yeah, and I think Porter, with his skill set, I think he'd probably play the offside. Certainly on the power plays, he likes probably on. So yeah, it should be a pretty good tandem. But certainly, whatever side he's on, I'm pretty sure he's more than capable. So. We're good. Thanks, guys.